Hello guys and welcome to the channel. This is Beverall. In this video I want to talk about ranger changes, the one that came with this patch and hopefully the one that will come in the future. All the changes about PvE, World Sword and PvP, how it affects our builds and stuff. So for a start, it's a nerf that we know will come eventually because he told us a long time ago. And most of us would think nerf or a rework, especially as he talked, if I remember correctly, about a rework, but I think they want to keep the trait as it is and see if it works with a nerf, which is fervent force for untamed. This trait considered to be overpowered by so many people, and it helped make untamed one, if not the best solo open world build in my opinion. There is so many builds that's really crazy when it comes to everything that can do using fervent force, because you can simply keep resetting your skills one by one, and it helps that untamed can be very tanky also with it, so it was very good. So it used to, in PvE, every time you CC on a quarter second internal cooldown, you would gain 4 seconds of cooldown reduction on every skill in your bar, whether it's utility, weapons, and everything. And even the unleash pet skills, because you considered your skills. However, your pet skills does not affect that, your pet CC does not affect that, it's only your CC and it's only your skills. Now it's got 1 second removed, it is now 3 second reset, not 4 seconds. So how much does that affect our damage or anything? For our survivability in general, this is very few, because most of survivability come from force fortification, from our healing skill, and from our pet skill, which does not affect by this, like for example hunker down for turtle and stuff like that. So it's like barely 2 skills. Yes, you can shave some from quickening Zephyr, you can get your cooldown faster for condition cleanse and stuff, but 1 second on my build at least, let's talk about, which I have only 2 CC to reset, which is shortbow 5 and the skill. So your survivability pretty much won't feel any much difference. And force fortification cannot be resetted on a single target this easily, because you will never apply enough hits, and you can reset time by 1 second on every attack shift from the cooldown, whether your attacks or the bit that it got used with. So finally your bit will be taken off cooldown too, only with the skill. And if you use a CC, you will trigger also fervent force like this one or this one, and it will shave off another 4 seconds. Right now it is 3, so it wasn't this big to begin with internal cooldown, so your survivability pretty much did not affect. Your damage, however, lost a little bit, and it's not by far. You can say it's about 1k to 1k and a half at most, and at most optimal rotation you can do. Without support at all, as you can see in the video, nothing. You simply go there and start hitting a boss that you are hitting alone. It's like a similar situation to open world PvE if you're running alone doing events or whatever. You would able to reach about 14k and a half, around that, if you fit your rotation around force fortification, the elite skill. So you want to have the most amount of hits while you have in it, so you can delay a little bit of weapon swipe because it will come off cooldown and stuff like that, and yet you were able to reach 14,000 and a half. If you didn't fit it like that, so if you swap weapons immediately, use your unleash skill on axe, because axe do a lot of damage, more than shortbow, don't use it to shortbow, and you unload all your skills, you do a reset if you have the time for it, if it's inside the rotation, and then you move immediately to shortbow to gain the reset from skill 5 and keep moving. And once the unleash skill come back, you're on axe and stuff like that, and you use unleash pet skills, and only after you done with them you come immediately to the other weapon to gain the most amount of damage using Valve the Untamed, which will increase your ongoing damage by 25% on power. So try to stay unleashed, not your bit, as much as possible. You go to bit to use unleash bit skills, and then come back to your own skills to use unleashed ambush skills. So if you do this accurate rotation, you can still get the same damage, because right now you're not modifying your rotation to reset force fortification. But if you do that, and if you start using it and try to do the highest amount of hits to reset the skill fast, it will lose about 1k and a half or something like that. And in the last part of my DPS rotation, which is not 100% accurate, but I will stick to axe and I will not move to gain reset and have a better cleave or something like that, which is something lazy that I do most of the time, just to show you the difference. If you're not accurate that, and immediately you're gonna see a little bit of a drop in my DPS. So you lost some DPS to this build, which is a little bit punishing, I guess. And this is how the build look if you want the highest DPS, but you can also still run lesser muddy terrain. You can still run cleansing unleash if you want for better survivability in open world. It's up to you to do what you want. So that's it for the untamed. It's not big of an effect. It doesn't really break the build or change anything. It's more of punishing to other builds, like the ones that run exploding spores with the spike trap and warhorn instead of torch, and alacrity from spirit. Those builds that count on this a lot will keep losing 1 second in everything, so the effect might be a little bit stronger with them. However, it was a very strong build anyway, and nerf comes. So that will be it for the untamed. Now let's talk about Druid changes. So the most important change that came to Druid is this one. So Natural Mender in World vs World, its heal increased to other allies 15% instead of 20 in PvE, and also only in World vs World energy gain is 8 instead of 5. This might look too big of a deal to people. It is good and it is very efficient, but it won't affect you this much if you play my build. Obviously it's a better, obviously it's a buff, but it won't change how you play it. So basically what really changed a little bit of how we play the build, it's when the idea of passively regenerating Celestial Avatar came to begin with. Because now you don't have to always take damage on purpose to simply reset. However, it is still preferable because we're using a regeneration food that will allow it to go faster, and also we gain a lot of regeneration from Healing Spring and from skill 5 on staff, Sublime Conversion. So it's still more beneficial to be not 100%, like 90%, 95% or something like that. However, 8% is very high. So if you break combat, if you're trying to kite and you don't have healing, you don't care about the distance. It doesn't matter what happened, because just few seconds and it's gonna be already on cooldown. So 8% is really beautiful because it made it in a really sweet spot. If it's 10%, I wouldn't need more, but 8% is already great. So this change was strong already, and now it is even better. However, with too much healing power, with regeneration as source, with the food source, it will not change anything between your rotation. When do you heal? If you're trying to always heal on staff, when you move from Celestial Avatar, it is basically the same. What it's really beneficial for is the builds that counted too much on, for example, on Celestial Avatar for support, if they lose it too fast. Like if they stick too much in Celestial Avatar, keep using their skills for Zergs and stuff like that, this is very efficient for them to get it faster. However, for us, we have a very basic rotation inside Celestial Avatar. When we go skill 3, 2, and then trigger 5, even if you finish casting it to wait for another one, you will never be out of Celestial Avatar to begin with, and you will be healing from another regeneration source or something like that. So it's already gonna be up. So some builds got this to be very efficient to them, but our build really didn't even need this much, because when I created this build, it meant to be efficient even when I had no way of refilling Celestial Avatar, no power damage, and Druid was counting only on mobility and stuff, so it would always be efficient, and this has just made it better. But you're gonna play the build basically the same. There was few other changes in general, like bug fixes, removing the cooldown indicator from two-handed training for Greatsword. The trait itself, it's like the same changes they already announced in the patch preview, and basically they are there. Now let's talk about Soul Beast and get to this weapon. So there is the Warhorn changes and the dagger, and we'll talk about them after we go through the trait first. So for Soul Beast, we got a buff to Eternal Bond. Right now, every time you use any skill while merged with your pet, those ones, you will get healed for a little bit higher than used to it. So it was 500 plus, it's now 700. It's a little bit of sustain that to help you, along with something like rug growth. So you can keep juggling few healing to sustain yourself a bit. Now other than that, nothing really changed with it. However, there was a change to Warhorn, basically a small change in bar coefficient with Hunter Call, when you call birds and they keep attacking your enemy, and it is a very small bar coefficient increase, a buff in PvP and World vs World only. And Call of the Wild is the one that gives you buffs, skill 5 for Warhorn, it's now giving you 8 might stacks instead of 6, so a little bit of tiny buff also with World vs World and PvP. Sadly, the dagger changes did not make it to World vs. World, it is now only in PvP. And they go as follow. The cooldown of skill 4 got reduced from 15 seconds to 12, that's obviously without ambidexterity trait, which is lower the cooldown of it too. But AreaNet already talked that they will be removing the internal cooldown from traits and put it simply inside the weapon itself. So maybe we can see this even less in PvP and it will be more. But like I said, it didn't make it to World vs. World. And Crippling Talon increasing the stacks from 3 to 4 and from 6 seconds to 9, so the damage increased significantly. However, it is only in PvP. This is skill 5 and it have 2 ammunitions, so it is fairly strong there. But like I said, this did not make it to World vs. World. So with those dagger changes not making it here, I was already considering playing with the full condition build instead of my hybrid one, but however I already played with it a few times and I think I like it. So there is 2 options in this build now, consider it an update I guess. So you can play the normal hybrid one, which is this one. I will have links to the video update itself in the comments or in the description. And my bits are Wolf and Owl. This one is for healing, grant me swiftness and allow for better mobility, and the other one is also for mobility with the skill CC and Primal Cry. Since it was buffed, I tried to play a little bit with it do some decent damage and allow me for some cover condies, which is nice. You can also go with my old iteration for it, which basically I used to use White Wolf, this one, because it gave me an extra stun break and made me able to go free and take no damage. Is a very good way to survive. Besides, you choose between a group chill and fear, so the choice is yours. And also there is another option, you can remove Owl and fit the turtle, since this will be your mobility and survivability style, and you can go with turtle, you can heal, and simply you can get access to hunker down to defend yourself from projectile, have protection, and also it will trigger rug growth to heal you even a little bit more. Those bit choices is either this wolf or the other, the one with the fear, and it's either the owl or the turtle are your choices for anything. If you're playing this hybrid style, which we use Warhorn X, and the Warhorn 4 will help us trigger one wolf back to unload a huge amount of damage on our enemy fast and even land sharpened stone if we need. And you can also run with vulture stance instead of a quickening zephyr, especially if you have an extra stun from this one. It is up to you, those are options. Every other skill you should leave it the same. And this is how the build itself look. We gain a lot of protection, and especially if we have hunker down, and it can reduce our the condition damage that apply to us. And we use Eternal Bond to keep triggering or juggling our bits the moment we need them, and also will help with our stability gain, since every time we swap bits we gain stability, and every time we swap bits inside we gain stability, and it will reset the one outside and we can do it again. Or you can go a full condition version instead of the hybrid, which is this one. And this one I use the dagger, and since I have more poison here, and in both version we use short bow, so I still have a little bit of poison here, I go most of the time with Predator's Cunning, especially if I'm running Vulture stance, which can still be beneficial. And I run Eternal Bond, and the other traits are all the same. And you can use the Wolf, and I recommend the Wolf with damage, because you are full condition, so you need this extra burst and covering. And the other one also I run the Owl, but like I said, you can run any form of the 4 bits I explained, which is the White Wolf 2 and the Turtle. But be careful with this one, because you have only one stun break here unless you run the other one, and also you can remove Vulture Stance and go with Quickening Zephyr. For the gear, on this one I run full Trailblazer with Crite, except my weapon I kept them Celestial to push the condition duration a bit, and an extra point. I don't lose much from going Trailblazer to this, so I kept the weapon as Celestial. For the hybrid one, it is full Celestial as you know, and I still use Rune of the Pack. You can change it for Antitoxin if you find a lot of condition, but in general it is the same. And I will leave a link to the hybrid one here, and it's basically the same. its condition versus a little bit of power. The main key difference is you run one wolf pack and you run warhorn. Every other thing probably could stay the same. With the other one, you actually run dagger instead of warhorn, and you run entangle to be able to catch your enemy. And you can move the axe, especially with the hybrid one, for a dagger main hand. So if you like your enemy, you can really burst them heavy, especially that the dagger can be very aggressive with the amount of bleed it does, and can give you a little bit of extra mobility and quickness and stuff. So this is the changes in general into Soul Beast. Now let's talk a little bit about the future of Ranger. So is that all? But no, it is not. Arianet was talking about the studio update. So if you missed it, you should read the studio update or check YouTube channels like Mukluk and Mighty T-Bot. They do a whole analysis of it. So they shared that the upcoming thoughts on balance and stuff, that especially there will probably be no longer development into elite specialization with the coming expansions, but they want to open more builds potential and theory craft by removing a lot of limitation. It's very vague to describe that this way, and many people think it is like giving new weapons and stuff, and hopefully that's what they'll do. But they left two very important ideas here that directed to Ranger. One of them is they will be looking into making a damage druid dealer. I think this is generally directed at PvE as an option for builds, meta builds in general, like raid and stuff. I hope this doesn't affect Ranger into a bad way, like lose a lot of its healing or of its identity if it changes. And it can't obviously be just simple buffs, but I hope that whatever reworks and things they change with the trait does not ruin Druid as it is, simply for making it damage dealer, and I have confidence in Arianet that they hopefully will do it right. And the other thing, they will be looking into utilizing underused weapon, and this just made me happy to read it, at least to some extent. One of those examples was Sword for Ranger as a main mobile weapon for power damage. So what I don't like for this is they said power damage, and I always hoped that Sword especially would be more directed into condition damage, because power damage have already great sword and it does not work for any condition build. It's very difficult to use it, because basically it turned to a survival weapon as a directed either to a hybrid build or simply a survival weapon, like using staff with my droid for word versus word. So to focus on sword also to be a mobile power damage weapon, why? At least make it hybrid like axe, it worked for both. So I'm not really happy about focusing on power damage side, but at least I hope it will be better, because sword is really bad in my opinion. Even so, I used it with build and I know its potential from the extra dodges, from how it's harmonized with dagger for example, and mobility it can give. However, let's not go around about it. It is one of the worst weapon in my opinion in the entire game. Sword for Ranger is really crippling, really small. The distance you move is very small. It takes too much time, the animation. And I explained in another video, and I will leave it in the description, that people was hyping the mobility that have an recovery animation at the end would drive the character a little bit back, which means even this distance is very lessened for someone like me. And as long as this doesn't change, and it's been the game since the release basically, so it's very punishing to use with a lot of builds, especially if you have a bad ping, like the skill changed drastically how it works. So I really looking forward to these changes for both the droid as a damage dealer and also for sword. Even if it's gonna be a power weapon, maybe it can be a very good mobile weapon to use for survivability and stuff, and you still have your offhand to offer a little bit of damage and stuff, or boons, depending on how you're gonna build your build. So that will be it for the video. That's all the changes. My droid is still the same. You have the two choices how to play Soul Beast, either full condition and hybrid as an explained. Get back to the timestamp if you want to see it again, and hybrid build, which is generally what I go for. You're gonna find a detailed guide video in the description with link in its own description. And also we talked about the change for the untamed and how it affected DPS or rotation or stuff, and also about the future of Ranger in the game development. This will be it, and I'll be seeing you next time. Peace.